Perfect. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Really working around, top of local search ranking factors as well as other information that we can really supply to any brand, small or big. We hope everyone is staying healthy and safe. It's getting cold, depending on if you're not in California, then it's maybe a little bit colder in the Midwest, right? So as we gear up for the holiday season, we know that holidays are going to look a little bit different, definitely with the COVID, with restrictions, shutting down, opening up, as well as different hours. But we hope you have some good food, especially next week. Definitely have some food coma coming in, understanding that. In addition to that, we want to kind of look at the local search landscape, how it's drastically shifted over the onset of COVID-19, different hurricane events, maybe something weather related to a local business or even to a broad brand as well. So from updates to technology to factors that impact ranking performance, we definitely want to showcase, what does it look like to actually update those, keep up with the changes, keep up with everything happening. So I really want to welcome, today we've brought together, an expert panel, know them very well, just researching them over time, discuss how marketers can actually stay ahead of the curve, understand what happens, what's going on, how can we do this in the next year, right? Because everybody's planning for that 2021 type of release or, new factors as well. So I'm going to introduce myself. So my name is Tyler Ludwig, Director of Enterprise Solutions here at Rio SEO, really focusing around product, looking at data. Been doing this for 9+ years now, working with Mick as well. And then we also have another great panel of guests. So Carrie Hill, local search analyst and community manager at Sterling Sky. I've seen a lot of her presentations. I think she's awesome. Ben Fisher, co-founder at Steady Demand. And then Mick Wilson. So he is the Vice President of Customer Success at Rio SEO. So they will all be joining us here. Now let's get to our panel a little bit better. I'll ask Carrie if you would start off with introducing yourself and your experience within this space.
Sure. My name is Carrie Hill. I am a local search analyst with Sterling Sky. We specialize in local SEO for, medium to large business, some small business as well, from single location to multi-location, not enterprise. I think we kind of take the other side of the coin from Rio's kind of focus on enterprise brands. But I've been in SEO since 2005. I started as a worker bee doing directory submissions in a cubicle hell, and just sort of decided that I hated it and went to my bosses and said, I hate this. You have to give me something more challenging to do. And they all kind of stared at me like, whoa, you're making us look bad. And luckily, I had an amazing coworker named Mary Bowling, who most of us know quite well. And Mary became my mentor for many, many years, and was lucky enough to start a company with her about 8 years ago called Igniter Digital. We ran that together, serving very small businesses, doing audits for about 7 years. And then I had the opportunity to go to Sterling Sky when Joy bought Local U, and thought that would just be a great opportunity. So that's kind of how I ended up there. But I've done everything in SEO from, like I said, directory submissions all the way through, schema, technical SEO, content writing. I could build a decent WordPress website, kind of all of the little boxes that we all ticked at some point in time along the journey.
That's awesome. Thanks, Carrie. And then Ben, how about your background?
Yeah, so I started in SEO at around, I like to ballpark at 1996, was probably more realistically 1994. But basically, when there was kind of no terminology for SEO, and especially local SEO, I was up in Flagstaff actually doing it, and it was a really weird concept for people to even want to put their domain name, say, I don't know, anywhere on anything that had to do with business. They didn't believe that the internet was going to be a thing. And I've done enterprise SEO, working like with, the world's largest web hosting companies, to focusing now steady demand. What we do is we only do local. So we focus everywhere from the franchise world, which is actually, we love working with franchises because they're completely usually out of the guidelines and they need a lot of help with compliance. And down to the single business operator, whether it be a lawyer or HVAC company, a plumber, etc. And we kind of do all of that, but we're very niche and specialized in just Google My Business. And we do GMP management, compliance consulting, and also protection basically of business listings, which comes with a whole bunch of suite of different little things, to spam reporting and fighting. We actually have a pretty high success rate with spam reporting, and it's one of the easiest wins in local SEO. So we love that. And I know you know that, Carrie, right? So, but that's basically it. Yeah, that's us in a nutshell.
Great. Perfect. No, that's awesome. And then Mick, I know you, but you can introduce yourself to Sam.
Yeah. Tyler and I have worked together for a long time, but thanks everyone for joining today. My name is Mick Wilson. I've been with Rio in its various forms for over 10 years. And in the kind of the SEO world since 2004. I have a lot of varied experience in digital, going back in my career, both in the agency world and then in-house with several brands. I think, with local search, it's become so integral to so many businesses, big and small. And I've really started to specialize in local over the last, 10 years or so. And it's really become a passion. And through all of the crazy world we're living in 2020, we're seeing with all of our clients and just throughout the industry how important local is. Even when your business is closed, like in New Mexico, they just rolled out a executive order to close all businesses. You still need to be on top of it. Curbside pickup and things like that are still available, and you have to actively manage your local presence. And local is a great lead gen into online attribution as well, right? People can be looking for your business online locally and realize, hey, maybe you're closed, but you get into the funnel, transact and do some curbside pickup, and it all it goes back to having a real buttoned up local presence. So let's get started.
Yeah. So I think just there's always housekeeping items go through. Knowing that most people on the phone aren't going to outside of the panelists contribute. We do have the Q&A availability, so if you want to submit a question anytime during the webinar, let us know. We'll answer those as fast as possible, as well as dish it off to Carrie and Ben and Mick on top of that. Also, you can also follow the conversation on Twitter. So hashtag or even at Rio _ Rio SEO or hashtag Rio webinar is going to be part of that as well. And then, as we all know, this webinar is going to be recorded. We'll link to it with an oncoming email to everybody that attended, as well as the ability to actually look at that for the next 24 hours and so forth. But really want to start into the conversation of this local search top ranking factors, right? So we think of 12 years ago, David Min, right? We all know David Min published his first iteration of local search ranking factors. We always see from a Moz perspective or whatever this big broad how things interconnect within there. So he polled 20 experts. Came through the local search marketing community to get their insights of what's most impactful for local ranking factors for that year. And he always does this over and over again. So today we're going to really solicit, I hate using that word, but I love working with Carrie and Ben and asking, as well as Mick, of what is the next step. So Google, as we all know, dominates local search, right? 80% or 81 plus percentile of general queries come through the US on desktop, 94% on mobile, right? They own that space. So knowing that local or Google will likely be the first place that potential customers, so your new homepage, is for business, what's the inevitable need to optimize and accurately display your business in GMB? So Google My Business is increasingly gaining traction as the top weighted, which we know, or should know, furthering the importance of local marketers investing in that particular space. So Ben, I'm going to ask you this: is why do you think GMB has become not only the most prominent ranking signal, and what does that say about consumer behavior within that?
Yeah, great question. So there's one stat that I love, and that is that basically 90% of local searches will show a Google My Business profile. And that shows what that when it comes to consumer intent, if you're doing something locally, if you're looking, say, for, pizza to near me or something like that, you want somebody obviously who is really close to you, right? So why, has local, I guess, risen to the top? Is that because we more and more, we want to find things locally. We don't want to find things a state away. We don't want to find, say, an e-commerce website, for instance, especially if there's a local intent. I mean, that's, I think, the simplest way to explain it.
Okay. Yeah, I would say too is thinking about food delivery, right? How that's kind of changed the game, right? What you were saying about there's going to be a local business, but then also now you have like DoorDash, Uber Eats kind of sitting over here that are kind of influencing that. Any insights there as far as that point?
As far as like, how like what delivery and
how a brand competes with a delivery service like that?
How a brand can compete with a delivery service like that.
Just don't suck.
You can't.
More of a compliment. More of a compliment.
Especially with the world that we live in today, right? You mentioned, the attributes that have come out, like curbside pickup and everything that have come since COVID. Right. We're all at home, right? We're not in an office anymore. For the most part, we're all working remotely. Local is extremely important. And so, GMB has really, adapted basically to this ever since COVID struck back in March. I remember when this happened, we meaning the product experts, right? The GMB product experts, we war roomed with Google the week that everything started to shut down. And every single week after that, we got together with Google, we met with the product managers and said, okay, well, what's happening on the ground? What's happening to merchants? And what do merchants really need? Things like curbside pickup, all of those things, all those attributes that you started to see rolling out, were suggestions that were made, and they, like temporarily closed, that you were talking about, like Mick. That was like the first thing that had to get rolled out. That was actually on Google's development sheet for years. And they rolled it out in 1 week, which was amazing. So, but, from a local consumer perspective, Google does listen, they look, they do a ton of experimenting, and they watch what consumer behavior is, and then they adapt based on that consumer behavior. You might have a lucky account, for instance, and just like kind of see something just like that not everybody else sees. But those are the little micro experiments that are happening along the way. So why have they become dominant? I think that the another simple answer to that is that because they're constantly experimenting, and they're also looking at what's happening in the world at the same time. They're constantly adapting and listening to consumer behavior. So of course, if you give consumers what they need, then consumers are going to use it and become and rely on it more and more and more.
Perfect. Yeah, and I think a good segue into that is, with Mick, right? Is he's overseen, hundreds of clients, thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of locations within GMB, as well as the, local map pack. Mick, what have you seen as far as, the most opportunities, right? What can we do for those ranking opportunities within search and local search?
Sure. Yeah. I think the biggest takeaway for me in 2020 with GMB is real super active management of your GMB profile. Ben mentioned attributes. Almost every week there's a new attribute or capability that's rolling out with GMB. Things like beyond curbside pickup, things like COVID compliance. Business requires Max to give consumers that confidence that they can visit a business. I think that making sure to stay on top of those and taking advantage of attributes that apply to your business are really, really important. From a ranking factor, it's something that I think is to be determined, but it's more of a managing your presence. When you get into like ranking factors and most important things you can do, again, I still feel that that active management of GMB, reviews obviously play an important part. Making sure that your active management of reviews, responding to reviews, showing consumers that you care about feedback and take action is very important. Obviously, you can't change where your location is proximal to a searcher, but making sure that you have all of your hours correct, all of the ways that you can contact or work with your business are prominent. There's online messaging capabilities. You can now, in certain verticals, begin making appointments and booking time through GMB. All of those factors are the most important things that I would really keep an eye on as we move forward.
I'll say one thing there really quick, Mick. You just touched on something I think that's important. We hear every day, about people are saying, "Oh, what can I do to GMB that's going to impact my ranking?" My kind of canned response to that is that, well, what can you do that's going to improve your consumer or your client experience? And so like the attributes that just recently rolled out, the new COVID ones, this was like 3 weeks ago, I think, which is like, staff wears masks, or masks are required, or temperature checks, right? Those are important pieces of information. And if you're not minding your GMB, and your competitor who's right next door to you, in the same category, they have those options checked, and you don't have those options checked, I'm going to go to the guy who has those options checked, because I'm going to feel a lot more safe. So that's actually a conversion factor, I guess is how I would look at it. It's not a ranking factor, but it's a conversion factor.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and as we know, conversions and clicks do kind of impact ranking, right? So it's a cyclical effect, if you will, in the long run. So there's interrelation there.
Yeah, that was a great point. Thanks, Mick. Thanks, Ben. And I think for the next topic is really around local reviews. So this is Carrie's wheelhouse, right? As far as providing powerful local ranking signal, and how are brands actually prioritizing reputation management now more than ever. I remember 5 years ago it was like, okay, we'll have a GMB. Okay, now we'll make sure it's correct. And now we want to talk about reviews because a lot of people hate us, right? And Yelp kind of created that in some sense, that space. But it also comes down to how do people interact. So Carrie, what I would ask you is, what do you think reviews, or why do you think reviews continue to become more important each year, which obviously we understand, but more broad light? And then do you have any best recommendations, or, what can we do from a best practice perspective, small or large, right? Everything is pretty relative within there. And I will actually surface a question as well that came in through the Q&A, was are reviews from Google local guides more influential than other users from a ranking impact or influence?
So I'll answer the question first so we don't forget about it.
Sure.
From a ranking impact, no. There's no ranking impact of a review from a local guide versus a review from a non-local guide person. What I will put a little caveat on that is if that local guide is somebody who is a micro influencer in your community. I live in a very small community. We sort of recognize the names of people that are pretty active in our Facebook groups and maybe have a name around town kind of thing. And they see that review from that who might be a local guide, right? So we see that review from that local guide, they might trust that a little bit more because that person has a little bit more influence in their community. Does not have any impact on whether it's going to make you rank better or not. Don't, offer treats to the local guides to get them to review your stuff. Number one, it's against the guidelines and it's actually against the law. And number two, it's not going to impact your ranking. So don't do that. So I prefer reviews that are natural, that not that you can't, in fact, we do use GatherUp, a review management system, where it kind of helps you manage your customer base, asking for a review, following up if they don't review. I condone all of that. I think that reviews are becoming more and more important because people are becoming more and more cynical. It used to be back in the day, if there was a ad on the TV that said Swanson's TV dinners were the best and mom, dad, and the kids had their little metal TV dinner on their little TV tray in front of the TV, that meant they were the best because the advertising people said so. And I think that consumers are way too cynical to believe what the ads say on face value anymore. So they want validation. Was this a good product? Was this a good service? Were they clean while they were in your house? Did they clean up after themselves? Did they swear and spit on your floor? Things like that are important to consumers. And so a review is going to help them make that decision. And I think reviews are taking another step to peer reviews. So we see companies in our area or in the markets that we service that have a lot of reviews. But if you watch closely, you'll see people in the Facebook groups in those areas asking for peer-to-peer reviews because they're not 100% sold on a 5-star or a 4.8-star review profile. And they're like, if you need a plumber, who do you guys call? And they feel like, their Facebook group community of 20,000 people is more trustworthy than Google. It may not necessarily be the case in real life, but that's what happens, right? That's peer-to-peer reviews are just as important, I think, as a review you get on Google. And I would argue, I'm kind of in the Mike Blumenthal, Aaron Weike camp, that first-party reviews that you have on your own website and that you can repurpose and use as marketing collateral are maybe even a little bit more valuable. Not that you don't need Google reviews, don't misquote me there. But I think that first-party reviews can be absolutely the thing that pushes you above your competitors from first step, don't suck kind of standpoint, right? That's kind of Mike Blumenthal's theory of how to win at business is don't suck.
No, I think that's a great point. Yeah, and I think that's happened a lot of what I've seen, because I work across all of our clients as well as Mick does, is those first party reviews, right? Survey data, right? You think of healthcare, was the bedside manner good? Was it the front desk staff? Like those are all those like little minute details that,
and Google's tuning into that now with the review
right.
attributes, right? So they're like, oh, like ZocDoc and all these other sites that let you leave like a nuanced reviews, not just overall 5 stars, but
Right.
how was this? How was this? And they might be 5 stars here and 1 star here. And Google's like, oh, And also I think they're doing that to combat the stars, no words kind of review, because they want content there.
Which,
But,
yeah, that one's tough. Yeah. Because it's like, yeah, I can leave 5 stars, or I can leave a 1 star and have no comment. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
well, as a business, how do I respond to you? I can't. You just hated it.
What response? Dear Joe, sorry you had a poor experience. Call me.
Right. Please.
I mean, that's pretty much all you can do.
Right.
Honestly, the response to a review, I think, is more for the future customers than it is in most cases for the reviewer. The response shows people shopping that you care about what your customers say in a positive light or a negative light, right? The fact that you took the time to respond and say, hey, I'm sorry, things didn't work out. Give me a call and let's see what we can do. That's a selling point. That's an extra value proposition for anybody shopping for a service or product.
Right. Perfect. Thanks, Carrie. I think next topic, really around, and this could be between both Ben and Carrie as well, is what are the declines of importance of ranking factors? So we just talked about reviews. Obviously, people are looking at. We've talked about NAP data, but what's on the decline as far as contributing to the local ranking factors that you guys see?
I mean, I think the biggest decline, and I think Carrie and I are both probably on the same page about this, is citations. They're just not important. More and more what I hear from people, agencies that we work with, is the only reason that they do citations is because it's pretty much an easy way of getting links. And that's about it. There are some major citation sources that are useful, but the reason that you get those is because that's where your consumers are going anyway. Right? So if your business, if you as a merchant, you get business from Yelp, well, then you should probably have a Yelp presence, right? But, it's like Facebook. Does that really matter to your business, as a citation? And of course, it's like Bob's blog. Probably not, maybe, but a local blog, sure, absolutely. Why not? Especially if it's well read, or a local newspaper or something like that. So I would say that's the biggest decline.
Citations and NAP consistency, I think, has really declined as well. There's some big sites where it is still a bit important. I would, again, like Ben said, I would worry about the information being correct and consistent on sites that are actually going to bring you business versus just, it being the same across the whole internet. Back in the day when we ran our little Moz local report, or our, what was Yext? Was that the one that gave the report with all the red stuff on it and freaked all the people out, and they'd call us and be like, this isn't consistent. And we'd be like, oh my God.
Oh my God, it's inconsistent. Oh my God.
Yeah, it was a nightmare trying to update it all because you couldn't get a hold of anybody half the time to update it. So I think that actually has declined because of that, because it's so hard to get things consistent. Google realized that this is not moving the needle. This is not like putting the good companies up and demoting the bad companies. This is not creating distance here. And so that's why they've turned that dial down.
It's too easy to game.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. I find value in like things like your description for users in GMB. You can stuff all the keywords you want in your business description. It used to work, kind of. But it doesn't really work anymore. Like way back at the beginning, you could put a keyword in there and it might work a little bit. Things that I wish would decline, keywords and business names. I don't understand why that's still a ranking factor. It's bullshit. Turn that dial down, Google. It's not that hard. They have proven that they can do things in a week. Why this is taking so long, I have no clue. I'm over it. It's so dumb.
I don't think it's going away anytime soon.
I know. I don't understand why. Like, what purpose does, like, if it's legitimately your business name, fine. I have no problem with that. But why make it a ranking factor? All it does is encourage the spammers. That's all it's doing.
Yep, I could go into the
Agree.
details on that all day long.
Yeah. Agree.
Um,
Hey, I'm back, by the way, after having some Zoom technical difficulties. Sorry about that. It totally crashed on me. I had the audio the whole time, but the video was gone. So, you know, I just wanted to jump in real quick on the citation topic that we just talked about. You know, I agree with you guys wholeheartedly that citations have decreased in importance. I do think, you know, just managing your presence at scale, like Ben, you said, is kind of a no-brainer. And there are, you know, beyond Google, Bing, Apple Maps, there are some directories, I think, that are emerging. You mentioned Yelp, but I also think like Nextdoor is increasing in importance. You know, here, factual data sources that provide location data to other platforms, whether it be apps, navigational services, in-car navigation. You have to keep those in mind too, right? You know, so many cars today, any new model 2016 or later has built-in navigation. Managing your presence there, especially if you're a business that could be, you know, gas stations, restaurants, et cetera, I feel like that's important as well.
Yeah, and that's perfect. Exactly. I mean, the theme of this webinar so far, I think, is really consumer experience, right? But I do want to address one technical aspect of citations, and with Google My Business specifically. So GMB basically will look at your website as the first source of information. If GMB doesn't see, say, your hours on there, you know, or other types of things, right, it's going to go and look at authoritative sources, what they consider to be authoritative sources, to try and grab that information. So, and we all see that all the time, right, where GMB is going to either push information into GMB and suggest it, not suggest an edit, but it's going to pull it and say, well, we think this is what it is. Or say you update your phone number and then you get an orange strike through. Right, that orange strike through is basically Google saying, no, we don't believe that this information is correct. But now you have to go find out why it doesn't think it's correct. And usually it's because it's pulling that information from some other authoritative source of data. So in that aspect, yes, you do need to pay attention to at least authoritative citations.
Well, and I think we also maybe should make a distinction in the nuance between a structured and an unstructured citation, because I think unstructured citations are very valuable. Brand mentions, what's you're located near, you know, having a restaurant listed on a theater company or a theater event center website as being right next door and things like that. That's hugely beneficial from a proximity kind of thing, from a authoritative kind of thing. So I think those unstructured citations where it's not name, address, phone number, website, but it's a brand mention and it's some kind of a proximity indicator or location indicator, I think that can be super powerful still. But, you know, worrying that doesn't list your phone number and your address and your exact zip code, I don't worry about that stuff anymore.
Yeah, and I think there were some good questions that came in, you know, around this topic. You know, what specifically does GMB use to rank businesses in local search? Name, validated business address. How is a service area business used?
Not.
So that, you know, and it came a question from a franchise location, and they're frustrated that the service area doesn't seem to be a factor. Do you see that changing, or any way around that?
Well, actually, I'll go ahead and field that one. So there are some changes which are coming to service areas. Some I can't really talk to them. Some of them are just what I think is happening, and some is just NDA stuff. But
Just quote unquote, Ben. Just quote unquote.
Yeah, I want to highlight a couple things though. So, and that is that okay. So service areas have been going under big changes for the past 3 years, And it started in November 2017 when they went ahead and they reduced, basically they said, okay, we're getting rid of radius, right? You've got a year to get rid of your radius. Then literally it was almost a year to the day later that they said, all right, you've got 500 service areas that you think you service. Great, fantastic. Thank you for all of that information. Again, Google experimenting, looking at what merchants want to do. Then they said, now let's reduce that to 20. All right. In a sense, they basically said, you've got a year to reduce your service areas down to 20 specific service areas that you do, right? And then now what we see, and this has literally just happened this week, is you would be able to put in, say, 3 different cities. And visually on the map, you would, when you went to maps.google.com and looked at your profile, you would see this kind of like geometric shape based on what cities you took, right? Like me, I've had this running test for ever since November 2017, where I said, okay, Austin, Houston, Phoenix, which gave me a really great, interesting little line, right? But now, if you go look at it, what you'll see is you will see that they have changed the visual look to actually be just those cities.
Mhm.
So on Google search, you'll see the shape, but on maps, now you're going to see just those cities. What this means to me is that signals that there's a big change coming to service area businesses. There's another thing that's actually going on with service area businesses that most people are not aware of. And that is that I uncovered a bug about, I don't think it was about 3 or 4 months, about 3 months ago, where if you cleared your address for an SAB, so you went from a storefront to an SAB, it actually, and you can only tell this through the API, it would actually null out your address completely. You would still rank where you verified, but in the API, there's no address. The other bug that exists, and that's still around today, is if you change your address in an SAB. So if you wanted to change your address for an SAB, you would go ahead, enter in the new address, and then clear it. And that would it would go ahead and just now through the API again, you'd be able to see the new address. Now instead it reverts back to whatever the verification address was before. So if you moved from, say, Florida to California and you clear the address, well, you're going to still rank in Florida. You're not going to rank in California, even though that's where you just put your address. What this all means, to, I guess, to wrap that up into a nice little bow is that I do think that there are actually changes coming to SABs. My prediction is that they are trying to figure out how SABs can rank effectively in multiple areas and use as a ranking factor. It doesn't exist today. It might not be coming for another year, but I think it is coming. And so that's just my opinion.
Yeah, and real quick, do you think, just on that topic of the, service area business is, there was a good question that came in is there any purpose or reason why you would add a service area in GAB for a brick and mortar location? So I think about this with some specific clients, that do delivery, right? They don't want people going to the actual warehouse. So what's your take on that one?
For why you would put a designated service area for a storefront?
Yeah, or even a designated service area versus just the brick and mortar location. It's
all based on your business model. So, if you're, say, a Pizza Hut, right? Or whatever, then yes, you've got dine-in storefront, and then you've got delivery, your service area. But if you are, what's a great example of this? Anyway, if it doesn't fit your business model, then you shouldn't use it. If you don't go see a customer at their location, if you don't do deliveries, then you should not use the service area. You should just use the storefront. Even if it does end up becoming a ranking factor in the future, you still shouldn't do that. GMB is very, very sensitive when it comes to service areas, especially when you have multiple locations and your service areas can't overlap. For instance, when you have an SAB even, If your surface areas overlap, you're going to get suspended. You know, and so for a brick and mortar location to do that, especially if they have multiple brick and mortars around, you know, the same city, if they start adding service areas, then, you know, the potential of them getting suspended is also going to be extremely high.
Gotcha. Thank you. Yeah, and then I think another question before we move on to kind of like organic local ranking and so forth is a good question that came in is, you know, marking locations as temporarily closed is that here to stay in GMB? And then also, do rankings suffer if you were to actually mark them as temporary closed?
You want me to do this,
So-
Carrie?
Very
or-
hot topic.
So
Yeah, go ahead, Carrie. You start, Carrie, and I'll chime in.
when they first rolled out temporarily closed, and like they did the thing where they were just automatically marking things closed, and people were like, wait, we're not closed, or, you know, how do I reopen now that I've been marked closed by somebody else? If you were marked temporarily closed at that point in time, you were gone. But they've refined that now. And if you're temporarily closed, you'll still rank. It will have a label right on that listing, temporarily closed. So I think that it's less scary than it used to be when it first rolled out. But I would also be very careful with it. I don't think I would use it like if you're going to close for 4 or 5 days to clean. I don't know if that's what I would use. If you have to close for 2 weeks because of a quarantine or something, maybe I'd use it at that point in time. I'm a little iffy on that, using that as a turn it on, turn it off kind of thing. I would probably just set my business hours to close for a couple days and then go back and adjust them. But yeah, temporary close, is it going to stay forever? Maybe. I don't think we can make predictions at this point in time of what's going to happen when COVID is gone, whatever that looks like. I would
Yeah.
hope it stays because I think it's useful to business, but we don't know. I don't know.
Right.
Ben, do you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
The
No
only
one
thing
knows.
the only thing I can say is this: is that adding anything for Google to the GMB experience, the dashboard and the mobile app, is pretty much an act of Congress. So it's highly technical. Like adding an attribute, by the way, is like literally one of the most difficult things for the GMB team to do. I know it sounds like it's simple, but it's really complex. So my gut would say is that temporarily closed is pretty much here to stay. And
Yeah.
until
agree.
merchants don't want it.
Right. No, I would agree. And beyond the pandemic, I do agree that it can be useful in situations, right? When there are weather events, when there are, forest fires, things like that, where temporary close is useful to a business. And so I feel like now that it's available, if you continue to be used, I think it's probably going to stick around.
Yeah, again, Google tests all this thing all the time. They're monitoring the data, they're monitoring usage. So, if they see something, if they see a feature and it drops below a certain threshold, which nobody knows outside of Google themselves, then it might go away. But no, I agree with both of you. It's here to stay.
Ben has his bat phone on, right? So dialed in. Other things we would talk about is, local organic ranking. So we talk a lot about content, inbound links, what are these validation sources within there? I think Mick really pointing this question at you is, the high volume of quality content can also impact local ranking, and everybody else can chime in after that. But what do you think are, how do you define quality content? Like, really, what does it look like?
Sure. Yeah, we've had a lot of experience with specialty local content over the last few years, and done several case studies. If people are interested, can let us know. Can follow up with some of those case studies. But I believe that what, quality content. I think, most of us are in the SEO space, kind of understand what quality means. But when you really focus in on local, it's key to be very relevant to that location and have unique content, meaning it can't be generalized, just templated content that you build out on every page and just punch in a few keywords here and there. I think creating real hyper localized content, meaning including things like landmarks, neighborhoods, cross streets, that type of thing. Even pointing out other businesses that may not be competitive that are close by that may be relevant in some way or familiar to a consumer. Like, hey, we're near X business or X landmark. All of those things, and having that written in such a way that's unique and again relevant to a particular location, really we found can drive the needle on an organic local ranking factor. And I feel it's something that more brands should consider doing, in your marketing strategy going forward.
I agree with that. Content's kind of my jam. It's what I do. And I think that being super relevant to your location and giving the consumer answer as many questions as you can for them before they try and come find you or come buy from you or call and order your thing or whatever it happens to be. Answer all their questions. My favorite thing to do is to talk to the people in the business that answer the phone every day. What questions do you get constantly? How do you describe where you're located to people who are looking to come there? Use the content from the people with the boots on the ground in those locations and pick their brains for information. And I'll just make a phone call and just have a conversation with them and take notes. And it doesn't have to be some involved questionnaire thing or whatever. And, I like the idea of mentioning nearby landmarks. We're around the corner from this landmark in downtown Denver. What I don't like, and I am seeing a trend towards, which drives me crazy, is if you're visiting Phoenix, you may want to visit the zoo or this place or this. Well, your divorce lawyer website. Nobody wants to go to the zoo after they visit the divorce lawyer. Like, I don't understand that content. Like, you need to focus it on the audience that you're trying to attract, not just use these inane paragraphs to fit a landmark in there. That's crazy. Like, if you're next door to the zoo, that's relevant, right? We're right next door to the Phoenix Zoo. If you're trying to find us, turn into the third driveway past or whatever, that's relevant. But like this mentioning places you'd like to visit in the area, yeah, if that's what you do, that's great. But if you're a lawyer, who cares? Like, I don't get that trend. It's driving me crazy. I've taken a lot of content off websites in the last 6 months, let me tell you. So I think relevant to the consumer is important. Not just relevant to the location, but relevant to what the consumer is looking for is like another nuance of localized content.
Yeah, that wraps up into something that I've been saying since the 90s. And that is we're actually 2000s technically. Don't optimize for Google, optimize for people. It's that simple, I think. I mean, obviously you need to analyze your competition. You need to see what they're doing, right? You need to do technical things. You need to do local schema. You need to do FAQ schema, etc. But really at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is the experience that consumer is going to have when they visit your website.
Well, and that leads into then, do you need one page about a topic or do you need 5 pages about a topic? How nuanced is that topic? Do you offer one product or one service that covers all of those 5 things? Or is that like 5 different services? That's 5 different pages. That's 5 different keyword targets you can optimize for. And then not only that, where do you offer those services? What's the most lucrative locations where you offer those services? This is my favorite tactic. I talk to my clients and I say, okay, so you're a landscaper. Great. What neighborhoods would you love to exclusively work in? Like, if you could get all the clients in that neighborhood and never have to go anywhere else, give me a list of those neighborhoods, because that's where we want to target. Those are the people you want to target your content towards. Don't target Nashville. Nashville's huge. Like, that's pointless. pointless or close to pointless. You know, let's target those neighborhoods and those suburbs and those regional colloquial areas that people talk about, like Tribeca in New York City, and that's not really, doesn't have a zip code, but is a very lucrative area for you. So think about your geolocations more granularly than I want to rank in Houston. Well, Houston's really big. Like, are you sure the whole thing? Because I think the answer to that is usually, well, not the whole thing. Right?
Oh, come on, Carrie. Don't you think it's effective to have like 1,000 links at the bottom of your website that point to every single zip code?
Codes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Add all the zip codes. Maybe
Criminal
in
justice.
1996, you know, what was the name of that? Hot frog? Hot something?
Hot frog.
Hot frog.
It
That
was
worked
Hot Frog,
great
sure.
there.
Yep.
Okay. And moving on. Just want to make sure, you know, due to time, make sure we get everybody's questions in and things like that. But, you know, some of the biggest things is like debunking myths, right? Local ranking factors, you know, does it important? I think we've covered a lot of that. One question that came in is, what's the best method to get your listing to rank after being reinstated when it was wrongfully marked as a duplicate? Right?
Yeah, I read this question actually before, because it's a little bit nuanced and there's some like ifs, ands, and buts. But after reading it, so I'll just read it really quick because there's a little bit more data there, right?
Yep.
So what is the best method to get your listing rank after being reinstated when it's wrongfully marked as a duplicate? After getting the listing re-verified, all of its reviews and pictures were merged with the listing and has been that was marked as a duplicate, and that listing now comes up. So the first thing is that what you need to understand is that when Google does a merge, they can only move what's called the review feature from one listing to another. They can't actually move posts, images, or videos. So posts, images, and videos, basically, if you still see those, that means that that's actually the original listing. So if you go into, so basically, in other words, what I'm trying to tell you as an answer is that the duplicate's actually your original, is what it is. If it was just your reviews and your images that are there are like 1 week old, that's a new listing. You're kind of tanked at that point, because now you've got to start all over. But if you've got the images that were there before, it's basically the same exact listing.
Thanks, Ben.
Yep.
And I think, you know, kind of getting towards the end here. I know we can chat all day, of course. But, you know, there's different theories around what GMB actually gets searchers to convert. So I'm going to shoot this over to Ben and Mick. What elements in GMB, citations, marketers should focus on really as the kind of core feature within GMB? Is it, you know, photos? Is it list, you know, business description? We kind of talked about that a little bit already, but I mean, maybe some three takeaways for each one.
Want me to go first, Mick? Or
Yeah, sure, if you're ready.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah. No. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to go with is actually posts. So recent discussion that I was having with a merchant, and, you know, because I'm skeptical sometimes of posts myself, you know, even though we use them with all of our clients. However, I talked to this merchant, and they actually got suspended for using posts. But and so they said they were not going to do them anymore because they don't want to get suspended again. And I said, well, how much revenue do you actually get from posts? They're like, well, when we do a post, we increase our revenue by 30%. So I'm like, oh yeah, so you should probably keep on doing posts. So there's that. The secondary aspect I would say is questions and answers. And not just questions and answers because they're an engagement signal, but because they are usually an untapped opportunity for a potential or lost sale. And they can help you improve your business, of course, too. But if you can answer questions to users, then you should definitely be doing that. And the third one, which is kind of related to posts, would be product posts, which is kind of a separate feature, right? But product posts can really tell and inform your users about specific products that you have and what the costs are, and in-depth descriptions. And who knows, it may end up becoming a shopping feature in the future. Again, that's just a guess. But yeah, those are the three I would go with. There's more. Mick, go for it.
Yeah. No, hey, I'll just, well, first of all, I agree wholeheartedly on posts. We found a lot of success if you do post right, using the right type of post, you have the right type of content and call to action. It's definitely a conversion factor. We've even seen Google posts. I can't say that they definitely influence ranking or not, but content from Google posts with certain keyword queries in say Google Maps, they drive the search results. So if you have content about, a great promo on a certain product in a Google post, and someone searches for, Nike Air Ones near me, maybe a little bit longer term search, that content will get pulled in and highlighted in the search results. And I feel that's something that kind of, shows that Google is looking at posts, whether it's a ranking factor or not, we can't say at this point, but I feel like it's something that enough brands don't take advantage of right now. Part of the challenge early on was it's manual and it's hard and it's confusing. And I feel like things have come a long way since early on. There's also APIs available to do posts at scale where you can. And I feel like, again, the post is something that can be a big conversion factor. Going back to the original question, reviews, absolutely. I almost always, when I'm deciding to go to a business I'm not familiar with, I look at the reviews. If there aren't any reviews, that's a warning sign, right? If there are negative reviews, that's a warning sign. If reviews are positive and you see the brand engaging, and they have a pretty decent volume and a high score at a given location, that is a huge conversion factor that everyone should keep in mind. And then lastly, we talked about attributes a lot, and especially in the new normal, which I don't think anything is going to be the same in Google and marketing. If you go prior to the pandemic, it's going to be a new different, if you will. And I think that actively managing and staying on top of all of those attributes and new features that Google is rolling out to inform your consumer, right? Inform your consumer on whatever it may be. We talked about, masks required, some of those attributes, but even things like just really updating your hours and knowing that consumers can count on, hey, when they say they're open, they're open. Those types of things are just, I think, they build consumer confidence, and that's really going to drive conversion over time.
There was a glitch, a month ago maybe, where the wait times at stores and restaurants was like super messed up, like showing 3-hour wait times on Wednesday afternoons and stuff like this. And I didn't realize how much people pay attention to that stuff until that happened. And the restaurant owners and managers were like, you got to fix this. This is a big deal when people are deciding where to go eat. If you're telling them there's a 3-hour wait, it's empty in here. You got to stop this. And I think that, those are big conversion factors for certain types, like, some categories, as well as, the information that they tell you, you're going to wait this long. People spend this much time here. Those types of indicators in the knowledge panel.
I think that's a great point there, is like what is being sent to the consumer when they're trying to find that business is can be messed up, right? If I'm in Kansas City and I'm waiting 3 hours for barbecue, it better be some really good barbecue, right? If it's a taco shop here in California, I'm going to go down the street to the next one and actually get it. So depending on that. So Carrie, I'll just, ask you, we asked everybody else, kind of top 3 things, what are you looking for in the, through this pandemic as well as in local going forward.
Like the top 3 things that I think matter, like
Yeah.
what you should have.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
primary category, which is still astonishingly not right for a lot of people who don't hire people like us that say your primary category is crap. Stop doing that. I think that it's overlooked too much, and secondary categories to a much lesser extent. I don't think they're as impactful as your primary, but to a consumer, they might be more impactful. That visual might help. I think that your business name, of course, is super important, to the point where we know some businesses that have changed their names to add a keyword to be able to legitimately list personal injury lawyer in their business name on Google. It's hugely impactful. It drives me crazy, but it's impactful. And then, I think the attributes and making sure that you have all of the indicators for consumers front and center, I think can help. Now, they don't know what's missing if it's not there in most cases, but if you have it all there in front and center for them to see, women led, Black led, LGBTQIA friendly, those things can be super helpful. We have a dermatology client in Hollywood, Florida, and I don't have the numbers like super dialed in quite yet, but I think that they're seeing some positive impact from adding the LGBTQIA attribute, because that's a big population and they serve that population, and to make sure that they understand they're safe and welcome there. I think trans friendly, or there's another one about unisex bathrooms or something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Unisex.
Yeah, those types of, if you serve those communities, if those are questions that the communities you serve are worried about, displaying that attribute to make them comfortable is super important to making sure that they know they're welcome. And so I think that can be a big factor if it's attributable to your area and your target clientele.
Great.
I would kind of follow up on that and say, so I agree with Kari. Primary category is probably one of the most important things you can do next to your business name. We have a lot of people that come to us and say, well, hey, how do I change my name in Google's guidelines to actually include keywords? And it's effective. I mean, it's dramatically effective, actually. Too much.
Especially in
So,
a really competitive market. If you're in a super competitive market, it can make a huge difference.
oh yeah, absolutely. The other thing is that where I will kind of be a little bit contrarian in tonight is subcategories. So I believe that, and I have experienced that subcategories are almost equally as important as your primary category. And how you can actually see that come into play is when you're doing different keyword variation searches in maps. And what you'll see is like, so let's say personal injury lawyer is your primary category, and insurance lawyer is your secondary category. But your query and your intent is to search for an insurance lawyer. It actually won't show personal injury lawyer as the primary category. It'll show insurance as the category. That's what it'll display. So that it comes down to intent. So I do think that filling out your secondary categories as much as possible is, and I've seen increases in ranking traffic basically based on that. The third thing I would definitely say is, and actually Joy with Sterling did a study on this, and that is the website URL that you're actually pointing to. Mm-hmm. And the reason for this is that Google does use the content from your site to weigh into other factors that are in GMB. So if your website's talking about personal injury and insurance law, and divorce law, et cetera, then that's going to feed back into, it's going to look at your categories, bisect that all together, maybe look at unstructured citations, et cetera, and then give you ranking based on that information. Where you can actually see this impact is by looking at the queries data, which is inside of your control panel, business.google.com. If you make that change, Right now, it's currently on a 28-day rolling window. So add some subcategories, come back in 28 days, and you will see that now all of a sudden you've got all these new queries that have come in. And by the way, that data that is actually raw data. It's actually the real data. So there's nothing being filtered out of it. So pay attention to your queries.
Perfect. That was a lot of great information. Running up on time here. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff to go through in this local search conundrum that we're doing, especially as it's changing. But want to thank everybody for joining the call, especially the panelists. Really appreciate all of your help and insights. There's a lot more questions that we'll answer, offline. But anything that we didn't cover today, this is going to be recorded. So we'll have that. Anybody that couldn't join or had to jump off, with a flash fire for any business needs, totally get it. But we'll make sure to follow up after with some emails as well as content download. And if you need anything, marketing@rioseo.com. That's RIOSEO.com. Happy to answer any questions. And once again, I'm really, really thankful for Ben, Carrie, as well as Mick. Might be a little bit later in your day than myself, but we're getting into the weekend, and hopefully everybody stays safe. And let's look for more content. I think it's great. Thank you guys so much.
Hi, thanks for
Bye,
having me.
everybody.
Thank you.